Well, good morning, everybody. Very, very warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Hopefully you'll find it really interesting. Just going to make a couple of brief introductions and a little bit of housekeeping whilst obviously everyone just joins the call, and then we'll jump straight into the presentations. So the background to today really was that having spoken to many of you at conferences and seminars and events over the last few months, we've noticed that had a bit of feedback really that some of the barriers to sustainability and energy efficiency in your schools, obviously a lot around funding and time and money and resources generally. But one of the other themes that kept coming out was just a sort of feeling of a little bit of confusion and about the volume of help, almost too much advice, and where do we start, and what's credible advice, or where should we be starting our journey on. And actually since then, although there's lots of things been going on in the sector, there have been some really important developments, particularly with some of the really big players in this market. And that's why we thought it would be useful today to do a bit of a catch up to introduce some of those developments that are going to help give you the tools and resources to develop your sustainability journey a bit further. So really delighted to have today two guest speakers. First of all, we've got Adam Flint. He's the education manager at Keep Britain Tidy, and they're the organisation that run the Eco Schools project. And one of the things that's that the sector has been crying out for recently has been a carbon footprinting tool and calculator, and that's exactly what these guys have produced. And so Adam is going to talk to you a little bit about that, how to access it, what it does, and I think you'll find that really helpful. Secondly, we've got Alex Green, head of Let's Go Zero, which is the school's campaign for getting all schools to net zero by 2030. Many of you will have seen Alex speaking at other CST events, hopefully, and you'll be aware of the brilliant work that they're doing. But they've really enhanced their provision through the launch of their climate action advisors. So Alex is going to talk to us this morning about that specifically, and how you can access that help. And then we've got some tools and templates and just a wrap up of some of the other things that we've been trying to develop in conjunction with our partners at CST and others to try and help you navigate this sustainability journey. So we've got about 10 minutes each, so about half an hour of presentation, and then we'll have some time at the end for some questions. Obviously during the session, if you'd like to put in any questions on the chat, absolutely please do so, and we'll try and have a little pause. Got a couple of polls in between the presentations as well, just to try and take a sort of feeling in the room as to where everyone is on this journey. And we will be opening up mics if you want to contribute at the end for a bit more of a one-to-one or any specific questions. We're recording today's session, which I hope is okay. We're going to chop off the beginning and the end. So the Q&A at the end, we won't record, just so that everyone can speak freely and not worry about them having that their questions recorded. But the rest of it will be shared, because there will be people that want to review this, and also others that will have registered for today and won't be able to attend on the day for whatever reason. So lastly to say, obviously the slides and all the resources that we're referring to today, they'll all be shared with you at the end. So as well as the recording, we'll share the slide deck, any links and specific documents that we're referring to, we can send you at the end, so you'll have a record of all of that. So that's it. Without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Adam, who can give you a bit more background and enable you to learn a little bit more about the Count Your Carbon tool.
Thank you very much. I'll skip through to my slides. So yeah, I'm here to talk about Count Your Carbon, which is a comprehensive carbon footprint calculator for schools. So I am the education manager at Keep Britain Tidy, where we've been running the Eco Schools programme for, well, 30 years as of September. So we're very much embedded within schools. This has been a great project for us. We've had some amazing partners. So Arete Zero Carbon, who are one of the UK's leading carbon management companies, have really driven the project forward. They've worked with a lot of the nation's big organisations. Our website has been built by Carbon Creative, and of course, we've been heavily supported by Alex and the team at Let's Go Zero. And just a little nod to our sponsors, Postcode Earth Trust and Callison Energy Group. So let's get into it. What is Count Your Carbon? So Count Your Carbon is a carbon footprint calculator that has been designed with and specifically for nurseries, schools and colleges. It goes beyond scopes 1 and 2 and starts to explore the great unknown, which is scope 3. So that includes everything from supply chains to food and transport. It's a free tool, it's UK wide, and you do not have to be a registered eco school to use it, which I think is very important. So in order to sort of like just outline the user journey, so a school will go to countyourcarbon.org, they will register a profile, and at the point of registration, they will input a series of data points about their school. So number of pupils, number of staff, what type of school they are, the type of location they are. This serves a couple of purposes. So it might help to multiply upwards and contribute to your calculation. And it also helps us to filter the data set in the background of the calculator for reporting. So once you're all logged in, you can then do a calculation. So once you've done a calculation and inputted a series of data points such as energy information, transportation information, etc., you will then get a headline carbon footprint figure for your school. I should caveat that it's an indicative carbon footprint figure, of course. You get that figure itemized alongside key emission strands, and then you get a set of recommendations outlining how the school can bring down emissions. So, why are we doing this? Well, we've actually generated a really large data set in the development of this tool. So we have, at this point, about 700 schools worth of data in the calculator. This is just a large enough sample size for us to start projecting what we consider to be the benchmarks for the country. So in England, we project that the annual carbon footprint is about 10.3 million tonnes, which is insane and obviously needs to change. And of course, the wider context is that you are expected to have a climate act and a sustainability leads over the next year or so from government. So we hope that this tool will be really useful for you and it will be a great resource. So just a little bit of background on Areti's approach. So use the Greenhouse Gas Protocol as the basis for our methodology. It's globally recognized. It obviously includes all 3 emission scopes. It's comprehensive and it's replicable. So it means that year on year, you have some consistency if you return and do a new calculation. So a little bit more detail. So I noted earlier on that we give you a carbon footprint. We also break that carbon footprint down across these key 11 areas, which are the central column. So just elaborate on this ever so slightly. So fuel use in most cases is your gas use. Electricity use is quite standard. The next one, waste, is how you manage your waste. There is obviously a lot of associated carbon impacts, but this is about your waste management processes. The carbon footprint of your water, your school-owned vehicles, and school trips. School trips includes everything from your international trips, your national trips, and then your weekly trips to the swimming baths, for example. We calculate emissions on student commuting and staff commuting, food, which largely is the contents of the meals served in your canteen, and then your procurement lines and your uniform, if you have a uniform, that is, of course. So a little bit more key information before I start to visualize what the tool looks like. So it's been designed for most school types, including nurseries and SEND settings, but we draw the line at boarding schools because obviously there's a whole other scope of operations that happens outside of teaching time. We've been consulting extensively with teachers, business managers and site managers to produce this tool, and we worked on it for about 12 months before launch. It was a huge project for us. I've touched upon the benchmarks based on the hundreds of schools worth of data we have in the background. We also have stakeholders in dozens of local authorities. They've been really generous in sharing a lot of data with us. And in terms of how many calculations you can do, we would recommend that you just do one a year. So we request 12 months worth of data in order to produce a calculation. I think if you start to do more than that, you won't probably see that much impact, I would say. So One more thing before we visualize the tool. So who is this for? I think this is a great tool for those who are embarking on their sustainability journey. It gives you a really good guide as to what you can start to do to put together your climate action plan. And it gives you an indicative portrait of broadly where you sit now. It helps you to benchmark and start to plan and move forward. So a few screenshots so you can start to see what it actually looks like, and then I'll hand back to Ro. So here's the registration page, quite standard. If you go to the bottom of the page, you can see register an account, and then you'll go through a little verification relay, as you would with any website, and then you're in. So once you've added various different bits of details about your school, such as, you know, number of pupils, etc., you then get your own personalized dashboard with various different elements on it. So I'll just point to the bottom right. So that's the section that says manage users. So in order to manage users, you can invite different people at 3 different levels. They can have full administration access, which means they can do everything. You can add them at a calculator level, which means that they can do a calculation. And then you can add them at a viewer level, which means that they can just see your reports, essentially. So, for example, if you might want to add a governor at a viewer level. And then what you can do is you can click on Start a Report. And then here's a typical example of the interface. So you can see you've got the 4 broad calculation categories along the top, and then the final one is called recommendations. So the first 4 categories are your questions, and then at the end, you basically answer a very quick series of yes/no questions so that we don't suggest things that you're already doing. And then you will get your carbon footprint. And I would say this is quite indicative of a small single entry junior or infant school. You can then see that broken down by the number of calculations you do. So, you know, the more calculations, the more bars get added, and hopefully you'll see it trending downwards. And then you can actually see it broken down across those 11 different areas. Ignore the percentages, because this is just obviously a sample design image, but broadly that's what it looks like, and your percentages and your numbers will obviously add up to 100. And if you hover over the different slices of the pie, it gives you the actual carbon footprint figure for each of those areas. And then finally, you can download a report for each calculation you do. I think it's a really printer-friendly, broadly white document. So this is something you could perhaps print out and hand out at your governor meetings, parent meetings perhaps as well. But this gives you a set of recommendations, and these recommendations are broad. You know, they can be cross-referenced to your actual calculations, and you can start to pick out the ones that work for you. And to aid you, we've actually keyed each recommendation. So visualized in a simple little graphic, you get information about the potential carbon reduction of each recommendation, the ease of implementation, the capital cost, the operational cost, and the potential cost savings. So hopefully it's quite visual and simple, and you can just pick things up and drop them into your climate action plan. And then just a note on what's coming next. We are about to embark on developing the playground, which has been again supported by our great friends at Let's Go Zero, and the playground will be a new section to the website. It will allow staff and pupils to take their most recent carbon footprint, apply hypothetical changes to school policies, actions, and infrastructure, and then model the potential carbon reductions in real time. I've read that out because that's a really clear description of what it is. And just one final note before I hand back. The Climate Action Advisors that Let's Go Zero have launched, a brilliant group of people who are supporting schools, are actually using Count Your Carbon, and they've been a great partner on the project. So we're really pleased to be working with them. I'll hand over.
Fantastic. Thanks, Adam. That's really useful, sort of fly through that tool. And yeah, I think really where this is so valuable is that actually those of you that are maybe on the journey a little bit with some of this, maybe in areas like energy and decarbonisation, manage to put some numbers against those. But it's when you start to move away from the things that are easier to measure, like energy through meters and fuel consumption, utilities bills, into some of those scope 2 and scope 3 emissions, is where this is invaluable, because those have been the parts of the area that are very hard to measure, and it's been hard to benchmark for schools. So even though, as Adam says, it's indicative negative, much better to have this as a tool to sort of benchmark where you are, and then use that as a tool to kick off a program of projects, interactions, behavioral changes, capital program, whatever it might be, but you can at least see where you're starting in a more holistic way. So it's a fantastic tool, and one that's going to continue, like all of these things, to be developed with more and more nuance. There's a couple of questions coming in the chat, Adam. I don't know if you can maybe just have a think about those, and then we'll maybe come back. It'd probably be nice to have have you sort of talk through that answer rather than just typing it in. So we'll pick up these questions at the end, and then if we could just click onto the next slide. We're just going to do a quick poll before we move on to Alex. If you can launch that, Noor. Just quite keen just to sort of pick up the point that Adam made, which is that the sustainability strategy is suggesting that all schools need to have a sustainability lead. Just wondered on the call today, where are we with that? Do all of your schools have a sustainability lead? So maybe if you could just put an answer into there and submit, just give us a nice flavour of what's going on and where everyone is on the journey, and then we'll move on to Alex and to talk about climate action advisors. So fairly even, but obviously a little bit of a gap in terms of probably about a third that have got that in place, and then the 2/3 that are either on the journey or haven't started yet. So great. Thank you for that. Right, nice to know, and it shows that this message is getting out there. What will be interesting to hear is more feedback on why that is the case and what more can be done to help. And hopefully this next part of the presentation will be part of the solution. So very pleased to introduce Alex from Let's Go Zero, and she's going to talk to us about their new climate action advisors and the help and support they can give you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, lovely to be here, lovely to join this webinar. And that poll was I'm really pleased to see, because we've been doing polls like that for quite a while now, and the numbers were always a little bit depressingly low, and actually that is creeping up. That sort of, about 30% now have sustainability leads, so that's lovely to see, and always brilliant to hear about the carbon footprinting tool. So Count Your Carbon, I mean, can't recommend it enough. It's just wonderful. It's something that we at Let's Go Zero have been working on, trying to get either for us to produce or someone else to produce for years and years, and to have this specific tool for schools is wonderful. It's going to be a real asset in that decision making and really understanding what they're doing. So I'm going to now talk to you about a little bit about Let's Go Zero, and then about the advisors and how they can help you. So let's see if I can work some slides. There we go. So as Rob said, I'm Alex Green. I'm head of Let's Go Zero. We've been running the campaign for just over 3 years. Oh, I've gone too quickly. Too eager on my buttons. So the campaign is a campaign to demonstrate the demand and the ambition that we could see from school decision makers across the country. We could see this real growing demand that schools wanted to be taking action and they wanted to be leading. So we put the campaign together to count that, to quantify it, to get that number so that we can help support a wider sector change. And we work with lots of organisations to do this. We've got a brilliant coalition of organisations that all work together, because this isn't something that we can do on our own. This is not something that one organisation can do. This is something that is a real collaborative effort. And as all that support for schools grow, actually one of the challenges now is just helping schools work out what they should do and who can help them, and that's part of our new project. But it is a real growing sector, and there is a lot of demand out there from school leaders. And we can see on our fancy map here that our Let's Go Zero campaign is really thriving. We are nearly up 3,000. Every time I make these slides and then I show them a few days later, they're normally out of date already, which is always lovely. But we're just coming up to 3,000 schools, colleges and nurseries signed up to the campaign to say that they have the ambition to be zero carbon. Most are in England, but there's also quite a few in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. So there's a real sorts of size of settings, different types of settings. So it's a really great to have that mix of schools all part of our campaign, getting their voice heard. So we were approached just over a year ago by a funder who said they'd wanted to support decarbonising schools. What should be done? What's needed? So we did a bit of work with our stakeholders and our networks to say, right, what's the challenge? What's the barriers? What needs to be fixed here to really get that shift change happening? And what we could see that it was time and skills and knowledge for decision makers within schools, within trusts, people who need to be looking at retrofit and climate action plans and all of the different aspects and scopes and this, that and the other, but actually they really are experts in education, and that they need some help and they need some guidance to know what to do first, what to do next, and how to prioritise. The second thing was obviously the whopper, is that they need funding to be able to do a lot of the work. A lot of the retrofit work still does need a source of funding to do that. So we really explored how those barriers come together and how they work together, because if you suddenly introduce an enormous sort of magical pot of money, that's all very well, but if nobody knows what to do and how to spend it and what should be done across school estates, that doesn't work. And if you give all the schools all this information and tell them exactly what they do, but there's no money to do it, again, that doesn't work. So trying to get that combination of support in place so that our schools can really be supported to take the right action and to be leaders across society to really make that difference. And so we put together this sort of diagram that sort of shows how we've come together with our projects. So we are launching, we have just launched 3 new projects. One is a zero carbon fund, which is we are giving some funding out to organisations who are supporting schools, and there's some amazing organisations that are going to get that funding to support schools to take action. One of them might be making a carbon footprinting tool, I think. Then we've also got an innovative finance project, which is us bringing a whole load of real techie finance bods together and locking them in a room until they figure out what we're going to do about this. It's not quite that, but it's about bringing the right people, the both public and private financing experts together to say, how can we unlock that money that maybe exists but isn't being accessed? How can we then bring more funding in? How can we look at the rules and guides on accessing funding to schools, and what are the barriers there and how can they change? So really exploring that. And then the third project is the big one, which is the Climate Action Advisors. So we are launching, in the process, we're just over halfway of launching our network of climate action advisors for schools, colleges, nurseries across England. So they're England only, I will say that, although the campaign is UK. And we're going to have 30 people, full-time, fully paid advisors spread across England there to help schools, MATs, help the local authorities to work with schools, help all the networking organisations to work with schools, to be there to give them that support that we know that they need. And I always get asked at the end when I mention this, is it free? I'm going to just clarify that it is free. They are free. They are funded by a wonderful philanthropic funder who funds all their time. So they are free to support schools, colleges, nurseries, to help them with their climate action, to know what to do. And they are completely independent. They're not going to try and sell you anything. They have no commercial bias. They are there just to help. And they do this by looking at different aspects, so energy, water, waste, travel, food, procurement, school grounds, green careers, curriculum, adaptation. We will give you support and advice across all of those 10 different areas. We'll help you write an action plan, we'll help you know what to do with it, what it should include, how you can then tie that into all the different government services that are there. So they support service for education, the digital hub, how you can get involved with any of the other DFE programs that are going on. Where there is funding that's available, we'll help you work out whether you might need to apply or whether there's something that it can do. And some of that massive, great big pots of complicated PSDS type funding. But there's also lots of really good little regional funds, lots of lovely little pots of money that we can tap into and help you to sort of know who to apply to for what. We'll also bring in all the other organisations and experts, whether they are national organisations or regional or just local systems that can help you do what you need to do. We're going to help schools talk to each other, because everyone likes copying everyone else's ideas, to be honest. This is no point in reinventing the wheel, just copy what the school down the road's doing. So we'll help share all that best practice and those things so you all know what to do. And we'll also help MATs, the dioceses, local authorities, to help to look at that more strategic sustainability angle. So how can you get it right across many schools, many settings, and how that can work to really support wider change. And then we'll also help to look at what are the retrofit options that you should be looking at, what maybe should you not be looking at, and help just to give a bit of guidance from that side of things. And we do this in lots of different ways. So obviously there are a lot of schools, and although 30 advisors is a lot of people, some of that will be through things like this, webinars where we're talking one-to-many. Some of it will be phone calls or Teams calls or email help or all of that sort of stuff. But we'll also try and be out and about at any of the events that are going on, any of the meetings, any of the regional stuff that's there. But we'll also come and visit your school. So we'll come in if you want your school to have an audit done, or you want us to come and have a bit of a walk around and have a chat and sit down, we can do that as well. So they are located across all the different regions, and they will be there to do proper real hand holding if you'd like to. But we'll also turn up at any of the events and meetings and things. You put a load of schools in one room, we'll be there. So just make the most of that as well. So we have now got our team in the Midlands, the East and West Midlands. We have 6 advisors spread across that region. They've been operating since November, December time. So they are up and running and wonderfully busy as well. We've just launched our London, South East and South West regions. So they are, I believe, 13 of them across that area, across the south. And they've just started, so give them a week or so, and then they'll be up and running and all ready to go as well. We are currently recruiting for the North East, North West, Yorkshire and Humber areas. So if you know anyone in those northern areas who might want to join our advisor team, please pass the details on to them. But by middle of August, we will have full spread across the country. It currently doesn't really matter where you're based, because most of the initial work is done on the phone. So even if you're not in the areas where we've got advisors currently, still do get in touch, because actually we can support you even remotely now, because there's enough of them. There's about 20 of them all in place now already. So there's enough support there that you don't need to wait for them to come to your area to start having those conversations. So 2 things to do. If your multi-academy trust is not already signed up to Let's Go Zero and getting your voice heard and counted, please do sign them up. You go onto our main website and you sign up to Let's Go Zero. And that, if you are doing that as a trust, all you do is sign your trust up and you put your name as the contact, and then my wonderful colleague Susie will be in touch and she'll send you a little spreadsheet where you just copy and paste the details of your schools into that spreadsheet, and then we sign you up in one big bulk go. You don't have to fill in the form for every single school. But this is the QR code, and there will be a website, I'm sure, that will then take you to the bit where you can sign up to get advisors. You don't have to be a Let's Go Zero signed up school to get advisors. We'd love you to be both, but you don't have to be signed up to the campaign to get support from the advisors. So do just engage with us, be part of the conversation and get your voice counted. And I think that's all from me. So back to Rob, I believe.
Thanks, Alex. That's absolutely terrific. And I think both of these tools, hence why we put this webinar on. Hopefully you can see that these are, incredible moves forward in terms of support and advice for the sector. The carbon footprinting tool we've been calling out for, and the sector's been calling out for a long time. And similarly, to move from just giving advice through webinars and advice notes to actually being able to have real people that you can talk to and talk through your individual circumstances is so important. And the reason that we're trying to promote this with these guys is that as Alex said, these guys are independent, they're well established, credible. These Alex and Adam both regularly sitting on panels with the DFE and the ESFA. So all of this sort of policy, these are some of the times we're speaking to people, it's like, I don't know which which path I should be following, which partner I should be going with. You know, these guys are the credible sort of sector leaders in this area, so you can be really confident that the advice they're giving you is really credible, independent, and as Alex said, it is free. It's genuinely free, and it's all specifically for schools as well, which is really important because we know that you're operating in, you know, in a special set of circumstances that is different to other organisations, even other organisations in the public sector. So, Nora, I wonder if you can just put up the next poll, and then I'm just going to wrap up with some tools. Just again, just to sort of keep monitoring where we are with these things. How is everyone getting on? Do we have climate action plans? Are we sort of part way there? Have we got them in place in terms of this sort of 2025 objective from the department as to where we are? It'd be really useful to have your feedback on that, and then we'll move on to some help with some tools and templates. So yeah, so I guess a lot of people that are on the journey is probably what we take from this, but no one's maybe quite confident that they've got a comprehensive document that they could confidently call a climate action plan. And I guess that's partly because there isn't a standard template published by the department. There is some guidance coming out, and I think over the next month or two we're going to see some further support from the department through the digital support hub, and obviously when that comes out, that's Joe Billington and his team, and he's been working really closely, I know, with Alex and Adam and all the other sort of players in this sector to develop some more tools and help in this area. But like everything from the department, it's a real oil tanker to turn around and an issue. And what they have said is that there isn't going to be a template document for a climate action plan. So what I'm going to talk about is now a little bit of guidance on that, and just to hopefully give you a little bit of clarity on where we're heading. And I think just as a background, some of you might have seen this before, particularly from presentations from Alex, the carbon footprint itself, sustainability generally, it can be quite a minefield. It's a complex area that involves many different strands and elements. We can get very hung up on energy in particular, and that is because it's measurable, and B, it's really visually expensive, and there's opportunities to save money as well as carbon. But our carbon footprint is made up of several different aspects, and on top of that, when you're looking at the way that you approach sustainability, and these are just a couple of examples from Let's Go Zero, from Eco Schools, there are some different categories that generally we like to look at sustainability holistically across all of these different categories, whether it's the energy procurement, food, water, travel, waste, school grounds, all wrapped up in this curriculum piece, or the Eco Schools kind of 10 topics. There's the 11 subjects. It can get a little bit overwhelming sometimes to know, what do I do? What ecosystem do I kind of adhere and align myself to? And I think that firstly, the important thing is there's a lot of commonality, even though there might be subtle differences between them. There's a lot of commonality between all of these different structures. And fundamentally, it doesn't really matter which one you go for, as long as you've got something that covers the big bases, and you will see that there is a lot of commonality here. But taking on those different aspects of sustainability, what we've tried to do is look at moving towards a climate action plan, and the guidance that has been announced by the department is to sort of put this into some sort of format that enables you to start to work through a process that enables you to develop your climate action plan and feel like all your bases are covered. And I think from that poll we can see that there's obviously a huge desire and intent to do this, but probably also a bit of a feeling that there are some gaps and not 100% confidence that everything has been covered. So we've sort of looked at this a little bit in a similar way to the way that the DfE approaches the Good Estates Management for Schools guidance, the GEMS that many of you will be familiar with, and produced a bit of a checklist document. And as I say, we will share this with slides and with the recording of today's presentation with you all. But it gives you about a list of 30 or so questions just to go through and say, where are we in these particular areas? What are the core tasks? What are the key elements that we need to have in our climate action plan? So as well as the obvious things around data and energy strategies and all those sorts of things, it's about, do we have any targets? Are we aware of our duties? Do we have leadership support, senior sponsorship of this? Because some of these things are actually key. Also, it will help you to identify a bit of an action plan, because as Alex has said many times on some of the other sessions we've run, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So whatever you do, don't beat yourself up about the fact that you haven't done everything, because doing everything is pretty much impossible. And the only way that you will hit your sustainability targets is to tackle things one at a time, iteratively, in a sensible way, so that you can take these steps towards becoming more sustainable. There's no silver bullet and magic wand that we can wave that's suddenly going to get you to net zero overnight. There are obviously some things that are going to have more of an impact earlier on and larger impacts on your carbon footprint than others. There are some things that are going to cost more, some things that are going to cost nothing. So it's about balancing all of those things, and it's about looking at what are your quick wins and what are your sort of longer term projects. And hopefully what this self-assessment checklist would do, if you're struggling with that, is to actually just get all of that on a page, and then to start to identify where some of the areas for action might be. In terms of the climate action plan themselves, a climate action plan is divided into 4 areas. The decarbonisation one, I think we're fairly familiar with, and obviously everything we've been talking about today in terms of carbon footprinting, in terms of energy efficiency that you'll have seen us talking about before, is critical to that, and that's where a lot of the work will go. But the other 3 areas as part of that is the adaptation and resilience. And that's taking actions to maybe reduce the risk of flooding and overheating, and these are really long-term things. But there are some actions that can be taken in the short term. But in some ways, some of this is around much larger kind of capital planning programs and that sort of thing. We've got biodiversity. For example, engaging with the National Education Nature Park, enrolling in the Climate Action Awards. There's all sorts of things that can be done across biodiversity. Mini projects that, again, the Let's Go Zero guys can advise you on, things like No Mow May and all sorts of forest school type projects you can do. And then the final thing is around, and this should be, playing to the strengths of your organisations with climate education and green careers. It's about how we're linking everything that we're doing from a sustainability and energy point of view to what's going on in the classroom, making sure that we're creating green careers and our students are aware of this. And actually, someone's made a point in the chat, which we'll come back to at the end. We're really pushing against an open door with our students here. These are the guys that really are going to feel the pinch on climate change more than us, and they're absolutely engaged with it. So the more we can link with them, the better. So those are the sort of 4 stated areas of climate action plan. And so taking that self-assessment tool, we've also created a bit of a template for a sustainability strategy or climate action plan. And this is in development at the moment, and we're working and talking to Alex and her team and Adam and all of the things that we've spoken about today can feed into this. So when you're talking about creating your vision or a target, or what are your carbon commitments, it's the carbon footprinting tool is absolutely critical, because it's setting that benchmark level that you're working from. And then you can say, right, and in these areas, or we've got a number here of our overall carbon footprint. How are we going to reduce that over time? What's the strategy that we're going to approach? What governance do we need to have in place? What resources do we need? What roles and responsibilities within our organisation are people going to have? What are the data requirements that we need? Because if we can measure things, we can manage them. Alex has spoken about making the invisible visible a lot of the time, and with climate change and with carbon, that's very much the case. What does a ton of carbon look like? If we can start to actually put some numbers on these things, then the data can be a real eye opener and start to make the journey a lot more real for people, and actually make it a lot more engaging as we start to feel like we're making progress in particular areas. And as I say, obviously using this to drive towards some sort of action plan towards actually doing things rather than just writing nice strategies and programs, actually getting our sleeves rolled up and doing things. So there's loads of help and support. Obviously today we've had some brilliant examples from Let's Go Zero, from obviously got the Eco Schools and the Count Your Carbon tool from Keep Britain Tidy. There's the UK Schools Sustainability Network doing some brilliant work in this space. We've got STEM Learning. I know Lloyds Bank, another CST Platinum partner, have got their Green Buildings Toolkit. And I think the other thing is to really look at where we can learn from each other in terms of what we're doing well, whether it's within your organisation, a trust, for example, or whether it's across organisations. But we know that there is a really complex ecosystem of areas that we can deal with and tackle. And you might find that you've got someone who's fantastic at waste and recycling in your one of your primary schools, and in another one of your schools you've got someone who's doing some brilliant things with green travel plans. But are they talking to each other? Is everyone doing the same thing? Are you getting the best value out of that, even within a trust organisation, let alone starting to share that more widely? And it'd be really nice to start to crystallise that over time through Alex's Climate Action Advisors, through engagement with CST, so that we can really try and accelerate this journey by people learning from good practice and what's going on elsewhere. So that's pretty much where we're up to. I just wanted to signpost as well as a sort of final point, bringing this all together, not necessarily something right from the beginning, but having a think about how you're going to collate all of this information. We know it's a big area, we know it's complex, and there's lots of different strings to all pull together into a strategy. We've got some tools at Barker that we're working with, and many of our clients using these in terms of tracking energy consumption, tracking decarbonisation objectives, bringing your information all into a single point, because having a written strategy is great. But actually, as you start to get into the implementation phase, you need something that's agile, dynamic, and is going to actually respond to things as you're doing them and enable you to communicate that within your organisation. So keeping things like the track of your statutory reporting, and we've got a question about SECA in a minute, project delivery and all those sorts of things can be done through the portals that we're using. So I hope that was useful. We've got a bit of time for some questions. Appreciate some people might need to be dropping off the call shortly, but as Alex said, sign up to Let's Go Zero, register some interest for getting a CAA visit, because it's free and it's going to really help you get the Count Your Carbon tool and start working with that. And if you find it useful, start to work through that self-assessment checklist, start drafting your climate action plan, and say, don't worry about the fact that it might not feel like it's 100% complete. Just keep adding to it as you've got that information, that funding, that person that's prepared to take an area on. So I hope that's useful. Has anyone, I'm going to work through some questions that are on the chat. And obviously, if anyone wants to put their hand up and ask something, then we can do that now. And maybe Noor can just stop the recording at this point.